Good morning to you, friend. Welcome back to the Morning Minute Meditation. Thank you for joining me for a moment this morning. I have been intrigued with the writings of the Apostle Paul, and primarily to that of his young son in the faith, Timothy. Timothy seems to be a young man who is apprehensive and naturally fearful. That is a problem that many people deal with. Lack of self-confidence and natural fears that they have to contend with and deal with. And the Apostle Paul warns Timothy about that in his writings in the Pauline pastoral epistles of 1st and 2nd Timothy. He says in chapter number 1, verse 8 of 2nd Timothy, he says this, "Be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our Lord." In other words, why give him a mandate to not be ashamed if there was not the possibility of him being ashamed? And I believe that the Apostle Paul is warning Timothy against the natural bent that Timothy has to be fearful. The Apostle Paul writes about this a lot of times. He says in Romans 1:16, "I'm not ashamed. I won't be. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. It's the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth." In Romans chapter number 9, in verse 33, he said, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and a rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. Again, the Apostle Paul in the great salvation chapter of Romans 10 and verse 11 made this statement, "Whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed." The story was given one time of a young soldier who was in his barracks. When he got there the first night in the barracks, he was a young Christian and found about 15 men gathered in his barracks, cursing and frolicking about and playing in cards and gambling. And before bed, he got down on his knees and began to pray. And they started cursing him and throwing boots at him and making fun of him. And this happened every night for several weeks. He finally went to the chaplain and expressed to the chaplain his concerns and asked his advice. And the chaplain said, "Well, listen, it's their barracks as much as it is yours. And the Lord's going to hear you either way. Just lay in your bed and pray." And so he took that advice and went back to the barracks. And several weeks later, the chaplain saw the young soldier and said, "Well, how did it work out?" He said, "Well, I did it 2 or 3 nights." And he said, "And what happened?" He said, "I felt like a dog, an ashamed dog, laying in my bed, praying like that. So I got back out of my bunk, got on my knees and started praying again." The chaplain said, "And so what has happened?" He said, "Well, we're having Bible study every night. 3 men have been converted, and we're praying for the rest." You see, there's no telling the power of an unashamed testimony of Jesus Christ. Hey, my beloved brethren, be not ashamed of the testimony of our Lord. Think on these things today, and have a great day.